And I say species. I go, what does that mean? I say, dogs are a species. I say, yeah, but oh, you've got, you know, Labradors and this kind and that kind and this kind. COVID is a species of coronavirus. And as a result of that, it shares characteristics with other coronaviruses. I say, why is that relevant? If you get a COVID infection and it's a coronavirus and you had a history of coronavirus experiences, which we all have every year because coronaviruses are flu viruses. And every year, many of us experience a coronavirus flu. But there's cross-reactivity in the species. So some people got infected with COVID, and matter of fact, I think the number when they first did the test was like 40% of the people that they found infected didn't even know they were infected. I said, well, how did that happen? Because cross-reactivity with previous versions of the virus ameliorated or reduced the problem from that infection. So a lot of people with a historic immunology, like the nervous system, is learning and memory. And the memory of the immune system from previous coronaviruses could reduce the effectiveness of the COVID virus. So not everybody is affected equally like that. The virus vaccine, quote unquote vaccine, contains messenger RNA. Remember the story, central dogma, DNA, RNA, protein. Well, the RNA that's in that Pfizer, Moderna stuff, for example, makes a protein spike. I go, right. And I say, and it puts it into the cell. And the cell, when it makes the spike, puts it at the surface of the cell. And I go, when the immune system comes and recognizes this spike, it makes an antibody. What you might not understand is antibodies become the most perfect physical complement to what is called the antigen, the thing that induces the antibody. I say the perfect physical complement to that spike protein that they use the messenger RNA. Then I say, so what's the consequence? I say, when a person gets a normal infection with that virus and the cells start to reproduce the virus, there's a special, what's called a polymerase. Okay, that's a science name. It's an enzyme that copies the code, whether it's a DNA code or an RNA code. There are polymerases that copy the code. The general polymerases we have are so damn perfect that in a million different amino acids making up a protein, that and making the antibody against that, it rarely makes a mistake. Like 1 out of a million bases might be misread, but it's rarely any serious problem. What people don't know is this. There's another version of a reproduction polymerase, and it's given the name error-prone polymerase. And what does that mean? Instead of like 1 in a million errors in copying the bases, it's 1 in 1,000. I said, what does that mean? I said, when you copy that nucleic acid with that copy mechanism, by definition, you make variations every time you copied it with that one. I say, so why is it relevant? Well, if I make a variation in the spike when I copy it in the code, when I synthesize that virus, it's going to have a different shaped spike. I say, why is it relevant? The spike that you made the antibodies to was this structure, and it only recognizes this structure. The complementarity is perfect. But when you make a virus that comes up with a different spike, the antibody you made to the first one doesn't recognize it. And that's what they call, euphemistically, breakthrough. No, the truth is, the antibody made against that spike is useless if the next version of the virus doesn't have the exact same spike. And the problem with that is something they didn't plan on in the vision. I say, why is it relevant? Because, let's say, Israel, with one of the highest proportion of people that have been vaccinated, also had a massive Delta influx, and a Delta thing just, blew them out of the water. Breakthrough, and I go, it's not breakthrough. The vaccine did not make the antibody for that variation of it. And so what's the point? Well, if you're going to use this messenger RNA, you're going to have to change the damn vaccine every time a variant comes in. If you keep putting the same vaccine in, it doesn't do anything. For the new version, it will only make an antibody against the old version. And so all of a sudden it says, well then what happens when a Delta version comes in, a Mu, a Lambda version comes in? I say, you got to make a new version of the messenger RNA. The original vaccine doesn't work on that. And this becomes a serious issue, because the idea is we've all been, not we all, most of us have been programmed to believe that this vaccine, quote unquote, is what will prevent you from getting a COVID infection. But if the version of the virus changes because of one of the error-prone produced versions with a different spike, that vaccine does not work. And then to get a booster shot with that vaccine is like, oh my God, you don't know what you're doing. I say, what do you mean? What is the result of the immune system? It makes an antibody against this spike, okay? And I say, when a variation comes in, the new version of the spike on the variant is not recognized by that antibody. Now I say, so let me give you a booster shot with what? The same damn vaccine that you already made an immune response. I say, why is it relevant? Because if you take that vaccine and put it in your system, what spike is that vaccine going to generate, the mRNA? What spike? The original one. I say, why is it relevant? What cells are going to show the spike? The ones that took the mRNA into the cell. And I say, but you've already activated the immune response to knock it out and kill the cell that has that spike. So I say, when you take a second shot or a booster shot and you've already activated the immune system with the first shot, and then you give the next shot and the spikes that you've already made antibodies against show up on those cells in the second spike round, guess what? The target is your own cells. You start killing your own cells because the immune system has recognized any cell that's bearing that spike is an infected cell, and the function of the immune system is to kill that cell. So every time you put the vaccine back in again, you select a whole bunch of new cells that are going to be killed by your own immune system. That's self-destruction. And so the reality is, if they don't change the messenger RNA in their so-called vaccine, then the most damage that occurs is to your own cells. You kill your own cells because you make them display the toxic spike on the surface. And all of a sudden it says, why would I want to activate that? And they say, because then it makes the immune system more aggressive. That's why they say it boosts the immune system. I say, at what cost? Killing your own cells. I'm not a very big fan of this kind of technology. I'm a very good fan of the old version of technology, which is you take the virus, you attenuate it, meaning you destroy its function, you break it into pieces, you inject the pieces, nothing goes into your cells, the immune system sees the junk broken pieces and makes antibodies against the pieces. Not just against the spike, against every site on that foreign virus. The old versions were much more effective than the new version. And the problem is the new version puts information into your cells, which then become the target for your own immune system. I'm not very supportive of that. And this is where, if you ask me, Bruce, oh, did you get vaccinated? No. Bruce, would you get vaccinated? Push and shove, push me against the wall, put the gun against my head. And I said, at this moment, the only vaccine I would consider is one from a company called Novavax, because that's the traditional form of vaccine that doesn't put any information into your cells, and it gives the immune system an opportunity to recognize the antigen that promotes the antibody without affecting your cells. mRNA is called genetic therapy. It alters the genetic activity of your cells. It has been outlawed up until the day they made the vaccine. They changed the definition, removed the messenger RNA from what was called genetic therapy. And now they say, oh, it's not gene therapy. I says it was until the day you sold it. And they changed that to sell this. Is it working right? No. And it's also dangerous. I say, why? The spike is the dangerous part of the virus. I don't need the whole damn virus. It's the spike that attaches to your cell and distorts the function of the cell. And I say, oh, okay, got it. And you put the spikes now on the surface. You say the intention is the immune system will recognize these spikes, make antibodies against the spike, and they make what are called T cells that are actually designed not to handle the spike, but to kill any cell that has the spike. And that's why when you do the second vaccination, you start to show the spikes on your own cells. You've already activated the immune system to kill those cells. Now you want to know the bigger issue? It was intended that the spikes stay on the cell. Now they found out, guess what? The spikes break off the cell membrane. They now flow through the system. And guess what? You don't need the virus. It's the spikes that cause the problem. So all of a sudden now there is these large numbers of side effects, especially vascular system. All kinds of issues with the vascular system. I say, why? Because the spikes are specifically attracted to cells that are in the vascular system. So I say, you put these spikes in a cell to demonstrate how the immune system will recognize it. You didn't realize when you did the experiment that the spikes come off of the cell and are now going through the system as if they were whole viruses and damaging the system. It was an unseen aspect to the experiment, and I call it an experiment because up until the day they released it, it was illegal to do this kind of research on a human. It was outlawed by all the organizations. Humans are not open to messenger RNA vaccines. That was called genetic therapy, and it was prohibited from human use. I go, then how come we're using it? Boy, is this a manipulation. Because they said, there is nothing else that works, so let's do the experiment. Well, all of those people that got vaccinated are an experiment because it was never even used on humans. And now we're using it. And no one wants to talk about the side effects. They're not side effects, they're direct effects. And it's not being reported, because if it did, it would look bad. And if you start to see the real numbers of what's going on are not reported because, simple reason, if you report them, then the companies would have to stop doing this process. And their intention is not just to make this vaccine mRNA vaccine, their intention is to replace all the existing vaccines with the old technology with this new technology. And I thought, that's the business model. It's not just one vaccine. They want to do it with all the vaccines. You can see I'm a little emotional about this because, number one, I'm not just talking as a side guy about immunology over there. I've been a professor of immunology since 2005, and I see what's going on. When I heard this happening, I said, oh my God, this is against the rules. You're not even supposed to use this. And they said, well, there's nothing else that will do it, and therefore we must use it. Well, now the results are showing up with all the complications that are coming from this. So you're all part of an experiment if you got the vaccine. I want to be part of the control. I'm the one that you don't put the vaccine in and then see what happens to me versus what happens to those. So I just want you to know, I am not pro mRNA vaccines. They're experimental. Now they're proving not to be that good. And I say, and guess what? The results of these things are not present in a week, 2 weeks, a month after the vaccine. They start to show up a year, 2 years, 3 years after the vaccine. And I go, oh, well then how long did they study this vaccine before they gave it to the public? Less than 2 months. I go, 2 months? That's not enough time to see what the consequence is. They rushed it into this world. It's business, baby. And I'm not in that business. And I want to say, I prefer to trust my own immune system. And as has been demonstrated, 99.98% of COVID-infected people have no lasting consequences after a week of crap. And they're free after that. So, regardless of what they want to shut me down for, my indication is this. I'd rather get the COVID for a week of crap than take a gamble on the rest of my life. And because I know my immune system is strong, and I trust my immune system. It's been saving us thousands of years before medicine even got here. Your immune system has protected you. Let's put some trust back into nature and to the universe that created us.